Greetings and welcome to another lecture in Introductory Psychology. This one involves one of the major transitions that we here in the U.S. anyway. Sorry, these developmental psychology lectures are very America-centric. Tend to experience in our life. Specifically, this transition is from adolescence to adulthood. Now, adolescence is what we think of as sort of sometimes a social or cultural, even a biological transition from childhood to adulthood. And the way I like to look at this transition in particular is going from being a child in your parents' family to being an adult in your own family, perhaps even a parent in your own family, which is a pretty big jump. Although most of us do this eventually. More than 90% of people get married at least once. And I suspect if we include things like cohabitation and common law marriages and that sort of thing, same-sex relationships, that sort of, I suspect that we would be running into something fairly close to 100%. Most of us wind up in this sort of relationship at one point or another. Now, what I'm going to show you next is perhaps one of the more obvious statements that you're going to see in one of these lectures, but it never hurts to confirm what you already know. Marriage is very difficult when the people going into it have different ideas as to what marriage actually entails. If one partner in a membership thinks that marriage is A, B, and C, and the other thinks that marriage is A, Z, and Q, they're going to have some problems. Okay, if one partner says, well, both of us are going to work, and the other partner says, no, one of us is staying home to take care of the children, you're going to have problems. So it really does help when both partners go in and they, as much as possible, want the same things, expect the same things, know the same things are going to happen. By the way, marrying someone, the odds are, will not change them. Or if it does change them, it'll go in the wrong direction. More about that in a second. So what with the rising rates of divorce that we're seeing, or actually they've risen, they've remained relatively stable, but with the rather high rate of divorce that we are seeing these days, a lot of people want to be very, very certain that they want to marry and they want to marry that person before they jump in. So we're seeing a lot more of people living together before marriage, living together as a married couple but not actually married, which is also known as cohabitation. In census forms, it's called people of opposite sex sharing living quarters, or POSLQ. And my mother used to call it shacking up. By the way, she was a proponent of it. She was a fan. The idea behind cohabitation is that you live together with the person for a while before marriage. You could figure out whether or not you will actually get along, whether or not this will actually work. And while it seems logical on the surface, one thing you should know about people is that we often are not very logical at all. And in fact, cohabitation not only is not linked with an overall success rate, again, your particular marriage may vary, but overall, people who live together, people who cohabitate, are actually more likely to divorce than people who don't. So people who don't live together before they get married, they move in, they have a tendency to divorce less often than people who live together and get married and continue living together. And there's been some suggestions as to why. One thing it isn't, by the way, is that living together you get tired of the other person, so you get divorced, because whether you're married or living together, you're still living with them, and they would both result in divorce, just one a little quicker after the wedding than the other. Researchers used to think that it was because people who lived together before marriage, that was considered kind of a daring thing to do, because the culture and religions and such were against it. Now, religions are still against it. The culture is kind of turned around on that one. So it's no longer just sort of the daring people who live together, and daring people perhaps are more likely to get divorced. What it's looking like now is a lot of people kind of wind up living together without meaning to, if that makes sense. You know, a couple is dating, they go out a lot, they spend nights at each other's houses, and eventually it just seems easier to move in together. Then you don't have to worry about other roommates, you know, get a nice little apartment, you decorate it, you buy furniture together, maybe you get pets together, maybe you have children together. And then after a while, people go, well, we might as well get married, we're living together. And in some ways it seems to be easier when you sort of reach that what are we going to do next point to get married, even if you're not really happy in the relationship. Because breaking up, you got to divide the furniture up and the pets up and the children, and oh my God, he's got to find a new place to live, and it might just be easier to get married. One of the researchers that talked about this called it sliding, not deciding. You sort of slide into marriage, and eventually you're going to get fed up. Interestingly enough, people who wait to live together until they know they're going to get married, they get engaged, they live together, we don't really see that increase in divorce rates. So it really does seem like it's best to hold off on living together until some kind of long-term commitment has been made. Whether it's a promise to have a ceremony or an informal, you have to have something rather than just kind of drifting into it. It doesn't work very well then. But whether people cohabitate first or not, an awful lot of marriages end in divorce. Now, divorce does not tend to occur because people marry the wrong individual to begin with. Unless you're having one of those celebrity, quickie, 50 hours, we were drunken in Vegas and it seemed like a good thing to do at the time kind of marriages. But for the most part, for the first year, 2 or 3, after people get married, they're very, very happy. They're very happy. It just tends to go downhill after a while. Part of that reason might be that unlike what a lot of developmental psychology books tend to indicate, people continue growing and changing throughout their lives. We don't do all the growing and changing and then once we hit adulthood, boom, we're there, we're done, roll the credits. There's a lot of changing that goes on in adults. A 20-year-old or a 30-year-old is very different from a 50-year-old or 60-year-old. And it's possible that what is happening here is not that people married the wrong person to begin with. It's more that as the members of the couple aged, they grew apart. And that person that you're married to after 5 or 10 or 20 years may not seem to have anything at all in common with the person you married other than the DNA and the wedding certificate and the name. And so that tends to be why divorce occurs. It's simply because people are no longer compatible. People no longer even maybe like the other. They're a whole different person. Now, if you're a member of a couple where you grow and change, and you either change in the same direction in the same way, or you find that you love your partner, your spouse, just as much as the person they've become as you did before and vice versa, more power to you. These are the people that stay married forever. But for a lot of us, forever is a lot shorter than it used to be, and the divorce rates are indeed remaining rather high. But there's something else that also can damage the happiness in a marriage, certainly does damage happiness. And I have here the beginning of a sentence that I would like you to think about the ending of. How would you end this sentence with something that is supposed to happen in a marriage? Marriages tend to be happy until... Marriages tend to be unhappy until the kids arrive. There's a lot of evidence that says once the first baby is born, that marital happiness, marital satisfaction takes a nosedive. And it's probably because children, God love them, are little tiny baby black holes. They will take every bit of time and energy and money and resources and attention and everything else that you have, that your partner has, that anyone around you has. Will take it and not, at least at first, give a whole lot back. And so the couple finds out that all of the time and energy and resources and emotion that they used to give to each other is now being sucked up by that lovely little person they just made. And they don't have any for each other. And they get angry and they get frustrated, and you're not helping and you're not supporting me, and yes I am, but you're not supporting me. And there's a lot of evidence that when kids arrive, marital satisfaction goes down. And there's also a lot of evidence that it goes back up when they leave. Okay? This is not to say that you should not have children. I'm very glad my parents decided to have children, for instance. This is to say that you need to know that this is likely to happen. Okay? Because if people know that this is going to happen and they sort of plan on it happening, or even if they plan the child and they get, okay, now's the time we're going to have it and this is likely to happen and we'll get through it, the unhappiness is much less. Which also might be part of the reason why what used to be known as shotgun marriages oftentimes did not work well at all. A shotgun marriage is when a man gets a woman pregnant and her daddy comes by with a shotgun and forces them to get married because she's pregnant. Well, if you can imagine a couple that have virtually nothing in common except they slept together, maybe a few times, maybe many times, and all of a sudden, not only have they been married, so they have to spend all this time with one another, they may not even like one another, but now they have this baby. If it's possible to go to a negative number in happiness, that's probably going to get you there. And again, yes, I'm sure there are people with shotgun marriages who wound up very, very happy, but I suspect the majority of them did not. So just do realize that should you happen to decide in your relationship that you want to have a child or children, do realize that your happiness with your partner, with your life, indeed, in general, may go down for a while, but it's temporary. It's not your partner's fault. It's not your fault. You'll get through it. It'll all eventually turn out just fine. Hopefully.